While DC has had its shortcomings with theatrical live-action movies in the past decade, animation has been their bread and butter for a good while now. Nobody in their right mind would argue that Marvel has had better animated projects overall than DC from the 90s to modern day. Many fans of the franchise likely developed their fondness of these characters through these classic animated TV shows and movies that gave justice to titular heroes, as well as fleshing them out more than the DCEU ever could. Prior to the DC animated movie universe that started with Justice League Flashpoint Paradox in 2013 and ended with Justice League Dark Apokolips War in 2020, most DC animated movies were self-contained, standalone stories that many times adapted iconic DC books. Whether it be All-Star Superman, Batman Year One, The Dark Knight Returns, Superman vs. the Elite, Justice League Doom, they would also take bits and pieces of stories to craft something new entirely. While standalone animated movies are still made to this day, the emphasis on projects standing on their own began to fade after the release of Justice League Flashpoint Paradox, where the creatives teased at the end of that movie a new 52 inspired universe that would have a shared continuity, with the intent of connecting the movie stylistically and bringing back the same voice actors, creating a more homogenized feel for these upcoming features, which was in stark contrast to what Warner Bros. Animation had done with DC movies before. The beginning of this new universe happened only a few short years after the launch of the New 52 comic initiative. However, the New 52 was supposedly used as a jumping off point rather than the sole inspiration for the entire universe, as more than half of the movies were either inspired by pre-New 52 stories like The Death of Superman or Batman Hush, or were original stories entirely. They wanted to experiment in having a lot of these movies build on one another and aim to create an interconnected universe with growth and consequences. The DCAMU allowed for several characters to make their debut outside of comics in any medium. Characters like Damian Wayne, Catherine Kane Batwoman, Batwing, and the Court of Owls had their first ever adaptations in this universe. Other characters were further explored upon and pushed into the zeitgeist ever so slightly. Despite emphasizing a new shared universe, the video sales numbers for DC animated movies released digitally began to decline. Majority of the top 10 highest selling DC animated movies in domestic home video sales released prior to 2013. Batman the Killing Joke is the only movie to surpass $8 million in sales after Superman Batman Apokolips released in 2010. The average video sales numbers for DC animated movies from 2007 to 2013 was around 7.4 million. The highest to this day is still Batman Under the Red Hood, with that movie generating around 12 million in domestic home video sales. DC movies from around 2013 to 2020, which represents the age of interconnected DC movies, averaged around $4.3 million in sales up to the release of Justice League Dark Apokolips War. And when you take into account movies that were released up to 2023, the average sales dropped to around 3.7 million. I think the overall decrease in buzz surrounding these movies and overall sales numbers can be attributed to a few main factors, particularly the piss-poor marketing these movies received in later years. For some reason, DC has never been good at marketing their animated projects or making people aware they even exist, unless it's a theatrical release. Genuine question, how many of you were aware that a new Beast Boy animated series aired on Cartoon Network last year?
Excuse me, the fuck did you just say?
Some of you might have seen the trailer for the Watchmen two-parter animated movie, but I haven't really seen anyone talk about it. Most of the marketing I see for these movies consists of a trailer, maybe a social media post, and mostly just ads on the back of single issue comics. Justice League Dark Apokolips War served as the culmination of the DCAMU, the final entry in this universe that was one giant crossover event featuring the Justice League Dark, the Teen Titans, and the Suicide Squad. A lot of people would describe this movie as the Avengers Infinity War and Endgame of the DCAMU, and that's kind of true. A more accurate way to describe it would be Endgame without Infinity War, or the events of Infinity War being relegated to a flashback sequence in the first 8 minutes. In all honesty, the movie was a bunch of okay, it's not that bad, but it's not great either. Some of the glaring issues with the movie involve the sheer amount of shock value present throughout its 90-minute runtime. I understand wanting to convey the gravity of the situation. Superman and the rest of the Justice League went head first into Apokolips to attack Darkseid before he could take over Earth. And even though Batman had a contingency plan for Zatanna to cast a spell on John Constantine to escape in case things went south, neither him Cyborg nor Lex Luthor accounted for the fact that Cyborg is half of a mother box, and didn't explore the possibility of Darkseid spying on them and knowing every detail of their plan. The half Parademon and half Doomsday army, or Paradooms, were pretty formidable, considering Doomsday killed Superman in this universe just like in the Death of Superman comic. However, I feel like it was in bad taste to have half the heroes get massacred or maimed in a PowerPoint presentation or a couple of second clips at best, and these aren't supposed to be side characters. These are the heavy hitters of the Justice League. It was rapid fire too, like yep, he's cooked, she's dead, he got mollywopped, they got jumped. Many of them with brief on-screen appearances had little to no dialogue. The entire Green Lantern Corps were probably the biggest jobbers in this whole universe. Darkseid somehow solos the entire Corps and the Guardians of Oa, and Hal Jordan brutally dies in a single frame with no dialogue. Another issue I have with killing off a bunch of these characters is the little screen time they had prior to Apokolips War. So many heroes were introduced in one movie, got to shine in that particular project, and are never seen again until Apokolips War, just so they can die a gruesome death. Some examples include Batwoman and Batwing getting introduced in Batman Bad Blood, then die alongside the other Bat family members thanks to the Paradooms. The Teen Titans arguably had it the absolute worst. Most of them just die off very quickly. The Suicide Squad throughout the entirety of Apokolips War had more screen time than members of the Teen Titans. Those bozos had one movie prior to this one. The Teen Titans had at least two, with Nightwing making appearances throughout since Son of Batman, but whatever. DC saw people starting to resonate with these characters like, nigga, did I just catch you having fun? With the amount of characters that die in unceremonious ways, I'd argue this movie is more so DC's Ultimatum than Infinity War, the Marvel comic event in the original Ultimates universe that killed off a bunch of established heroes like Wolverine, Daredevil, Professor X, Cyclops, Magneto, Doctor Strange, and a bunch of other characters for no reason other than to be edgy and brutal. Literally the first person you see die on the Teen Titans is Wallace West Kid Flash. When the hell was he introduced in this universe? This movie is technically the first ever appearance of this Kid Flash, and it's him watching Superman's debriefing alongside the rest of the Titans. Then next time you see him is his lifeless corpse. Bumblebee had one flashback sequence in Justice League vs. Teen Titans with the original version of the team where Dick Grayson was still Robin. Random side tangent. Apparently the original Kid Flash in the Teen Titans flashback wasn't intended to be Wally West, but rather Barry Allen as Kid Flash, according to one of the head producers of the DCAMU.
Why are you fucking with me? Why are you fucking with me? Why are you fucking with me?
Please explain to me how that makes any logical sense. You mean to tell me the Barry Allen Flash we see as a founding member of the Justice League is supposed to be around the same age as Nightwing, Starfire, and Beast Boy? On top of that, Barry Allen had no idea Batman was real in the Justice League War movie.
Batman's real?
Yeah, he's over there.
What? It is a real honor to meet you, sir. Batman. Sir, Batman, sir.
Why would you question Batman's existence if you supposedly worked with his first sidekick many years prior to the formation of the Justice League? Anyway, moving on. I feel like killing off characters who had little presence in the larger DCAMU comes across as an easy way to add to the body count rather than an earned emotional moment. Across all 16 movies, most attention was given to characters like Superman, a little bit of Nightwing, Flash, a lot of Damian Wayne, and of course the character with the most screen time, appearing in 14 out of the 16 movies in the DCAMU, is Batman. The head producer even admitted that he would have liked to do more with the Teen Titans as they were full of life and he liked the direction they were heading in. Look, I'm not trying to come off as, they killed off my favorite superheroes. I just feel like it was very mean-spirited to have heroes like Shazam, Hawkman, John Stewart, and Starfire get taken care of so quickly or off screen to either permanently die or get transformed to Darkseid's minions for the sake of giving lesser characters like the Suicide Squad more screen time. You can kill characters off if executed well, but in here, especially after the 2-year time gap and everyone's fighting for their lives, it just doesn't serve any narrative purpose, and it just is like, okay, Superboy's dead, yep, Batgirl's dead, whoop-de-freaking-do. The end of Apokolips War features Barry Allen going back in time to create another Flashpoint, setting up a larger narrative that led to the creation of the Tomorrowverse. This was the catalyst for the Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths trilogy and the reason why the multiverse was dying. Attempting to kill an infant Darkseid broke reality and caused the existence of the multiverse, which wasn't supposed to happen, so the different monitors destroying the different Earths act as sort of an antibody.
You sent him to rewrite history. What gave you the right?
Welcome to Apokolips, Butts.
The only way to stop Darkseid was to eliminate him before the invasion.
He's a fixed point in time. He must exist.
Barry won't do it. It's not in him.
Don't you think I knew that? The spell darkest of magic.
He's living poison.
He doesn't have to do anything to the little monster. He's already done it.
This man is from an Earth that existed before our multiverse, decimated by Darkseid. He was a fixed point in time.
And didn't change the universe. It shattered it.
Every critical decision created a new possible reality.
The multiverse is expanding geometrically.
Infinite Earths.
The universe wasn't designed to support infinite variations of itself.
What's even worse about all of this is that the DCAMU was replaced with an even more mediocre universe, featuring a rushed finale and even less fleshed out and developed characters, along with the animation getting more and more stiff with each passing entry. Much of the characters in the Crisis trilogy had less screen time than some of the characters in Apokolips War. The Tomorrowverse only lasted 4 years with 10 feature films in total, half of them being split parts of a larger story like the Batman The Long Halloween 2-parter and the aforementioned Crisis trilogy. Apparently, it was pre-planned for the Tomorrowverse to be 10 movies in total that would culminate in a crossover event. Warner Brothers didn't want the new universe to go on for too long and only wanted to do a 10-movie arc. WB intended on bringing in other producers to start a separate universe of their own down the line, which would later turn out to be James Gunn and Peter Safran. There was definitely a noticeable decrease in budget over the years as DC animated movies were released. Not only could you see it in the downgrade in animation and art style, the producers of the Crisis on Infinite Earths trilogy simply couldn't afford more voice actors for a bunch of the background characters on screen, which is why there are a good chunk of DC characters seen but not heard. So when looking at the grand scheme of things, the Tomorrowverse's entire narrative purpose was just to build up to a Crisis event using the pieces left over by the previous universe. There was a lot of missed potential in not fixing the mistakes of the DCAMU and possibly delving into untapped story arcs and characters never seen before. Many arcs and character developments were mishandled, such as the formation of the Justice League happening off screen, or the bastardization of Hal Jordan in the Green Lantern Corps, massive pacing issues in the Crisis trilogy and in Justice League War World. Shoot, I'm not saying it's inherently better, but the Crisis event in the CW Arrowverse had more excitement with certain cameos and certainly had a better build-up across the different shows. After 11 years of interconnected DC animated movies with the same animation and art style, I think I'm good in not seeing another attempt in a DCAMU or a Tomorrowverse. DC animated movies were at their prime when they didn't have to be developed as part of the same continuity and were more standalone. I have no idea if future animated movies will still be home video releases like they have been for decades, or if there will be more of an emphasis on releasing them theatrically with bigger budgets under DC Studios, or possibly have them be exclusive to streaming services like Max. James Gunn did mention that the goal for DC Studios is to release one animated movie per year theatrically, along with 2 animated shows for Max. It seems like not every animated project in development will be forced into the DCU canon, since the Starfire animated show, My Adventures with Green Lantern, and the DC Superpower show all take place in their own established canon. My Adventures with Green Lantern will take place in the same universe as My Adventures with Superman, hence the similarities in the title. As long as there is a focus on allowing these animated projects to stand on their own stylistically and tone-wise, whether it be DCU connected shows like Creature Commandos or something else entirely, DC animation might have a bright future ahead.